If the S-400 Gravestone is as good as advertised, why did a single MiG-29 slip through and wreck 5 KH-101 bombers, then escape under a blizzard of radar? You're in the right place. We'll walk you through the 15,000 to 164-foot dive, the inertial nav plan, and the high-G turnout that broke Russia's air shield long enough for AI swarms and partisans to hit rail, oil, and power, driving a regional blackout and strategic panic. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Start with the map. The route wasn't drawn to chase targets, it was built to erase signatures. A night launch from a dark ramp, no taxi lights, canopy glow taped down, and every non-essential emitter dead. The pilot crossed the initial point on stopwatch time, not a radio call, feeding a wartime Ukrainian inertial solution that had been carefully aligned on the ground. No GPS chirp, no data link handshakes. The first turn nudged the nose toward a river valley chosen days earlier for terrain masking. The valley's banks, power lines and bends would cut sight lines and soak radar beams. The jet slid into the slot and let geography do the work. Russian electronic warfare was humming, GPS returns were dirty, a single radar pop meant instant vectors from S-400 search radars and the point defense web around them, Panzer belts and Tor units moving like chess pieces, so the jet stayed dark and trusted math, inertial navigation rides on tiny motions measured by gyros and accelerometers. It never asks the sky for permission, the risk is drift, meters turn into tens of meters if you let it, but that's why the pilot built passive cross-checks into the run, river confluences at expected times, a bridge shadow where the valley narrows, a power substation hum that shows on a threat receiver as a faint tick. HQ tightened the solution without broadcasting a thing. Altitude solved two problems. At 15,000 feet, early warning radars get an easy look. At 164 feet, they start fighting the Earth. Snow fell thick, scattering energy and clogging returns. The jet dropped through layers until the stopwatch hit the descent gate, then leveled inside the blizzard clutter. The valley turned into a moving tunnel. The radar geometry shifted in his favor. Look-down radars suffer from ground return, and the angle gets worse when the target is low and masked by bends. Every curve shaved seconds off reaction time because a search beam had to swing, settle, and process before a fire control unit could even think about a shot. The plan leaned on that delay. The run-in lined up along a known blast vent path, not the obvious door. Two 100-pound bombs hung under the jet, selected for hardened entry points, fuse timing preset to bite before bursting. The approach azimuth put the shock where it could travel, not where concrete was thickest. The jet crossed a final ridgeline and traded a notch of speed for stability. The bomb release window was down to heartbeats. No laser, no radio cue, just a clock, a reticle, and a valley wall flicking by. Release. The nose kicked a hair to account for crosswind drift learned from the last bend's timing error. Then the stick came back, and the load factor spiked. A 9G break, 8 altitude margin, but broke the tracking solutions that gun-laying radars prefer. Tracers stitched the air late and wide. A launch plume flashed near a riverside checkpoint. The jet rolled again, using the valley floor as a shield, while the blizzard turned hot exhaust into smeared signatures. The hangar didn't crack quietly. It breathed fire, then exhaled it. Secondary blasts ran the service bays, then the fuel pits, then into the bomber line. 5 aircraft and their cargo cooked off, and the column lit the night. Air defense units shifted positions, S-400 vehicles pulled cables, and search radars cycled trying to find a ghost that had already dumped altitude and slid behind another bend. What opened wasn't a door in a roof, it was a timing gap across a region. Those minutes bought more than an exit route. They bought space for a second wave already threading the same valley logic from farther out. If one strike was the match, the grid flickered because timing unraveled the script. When S-400 regiments pulled cables and rotated their dishes to chase the first ghost, gaps opened in coverage that didn't show on any map. Ukraine's operators didn't rush noise into those gaps, they layered it. AI-guided swarms lifted off in staggered waves. Launch clocks built around radar warm-up cycles, and decoys went first. Partisans on the ground put eyes on junctions, power yards, and depot fences, not to attack yet, but to mark who moved and how fast. The window wasn't big, it was predictable. Russia's defense stayed heavy. Panzer batteries ringed key sites. Tor units rode shotgun on rails and roads. Regional electronic warfare units threw up jamming cones and tried to wash the sky. Each had a different tempo. Panzer crews could swat fast movers, but wasted seconds chasing slow, low blips near clutter. Tor radars handled small targets well, but lost rhythm when they had to switch sectors. EW units jammed wide and loud, then had to pause to cool and recalibrate. The plan counted on those rhythms. Not a breakthrough, a beat. Swarms work when every drone doesn't matter. Low-cost airframes flew in mixed roles. Some stayed in ghost mode, emissions cold, riding inertial and terrain matching. Others turned their reflectors up to 11, broadcasting simple angles that looked like threats to a search radar. The AI sat in the loop, not for control sticks, but for decisions in milliseconds. When a decoy pulled a search cone, survivors bent around it, recomputing routes to hit from a side the radar wasn't covering yet. When a shooter went down, its target didn't go dark. Another airframe picked it up without a radio call the enemy could chase. They didn't chase headlines, they chased paralysis. Rail choke points mattered more than bridges, because one switch yard can stall 10 lines of wagons. Storage tanks mattered more than flares, because hot fuel feeds sorties next week, not tonight. Command nodes with quiet antennas mattered, because those rooms fed orders to cranes, locomotives, and repair crews. The goal wasn't a big fireball, it was a region that couldn't move. One oil hub and a jet fuel additive plant went quiet within hours. You didn't need a satellite photo to see the effect, you could read it in what stopped flying. Sortie counts dipped, then held, because aviation fuel supply didn't bounce back with a new nozzle. Repair teams split across multiple fires and control rooms. Spare pumps and valves thinned out. The cost was counted in engines that didn't spool, not just walls that fell. Farther south, a drone-assisted hit on a Black Sea oil asset forced ships to reroute. Harbor schedules drifted, pipeline valves throttled, while operators checked sensors and traced pressure drops they didn't trust. Every extra nautical mile and every reduced flow rate burned time and cash. Tankers waited at anchor, crews on the clock, insurance meters running. Weather did half the work and hid the other half. Heavy snow-soaked radios and smudged radar returns. Cold-soaked electronics lagged on startup, and calibration routines stretched. Operators used the noise. Jammers didn't shout. They whispered into the same clutter bands the storm created, making real targets blend into the mess. The swarm leaned into that cover, flying altitudes where ground return was already ugly, and the bends of the terrain cut sight lines thin. And that map is what changed. One precise breach didn't end a system, it redrew its boundaries long enough to set conditions for the next move, and winter holds those lines longer than summer.